In this week's video, we will get into the arrest and transport of the co-conspirators to Lexington Jail and the bail hearings. Also, while the newspapers compared the conspirators' case to the Caleb Powers case, will those that stood accused of the plot to kill Town Marshall James Cockrill be able to have bond, or will it be denied? More court surprises are ahead as we watch the defendants prepare for their trial in the murder case of James Cockrill. All aboard the Kentucky-Tennessee Living Time Machine. Please fasten your seatbelts and keep your arms and legs inside of the vehicle at all times. But to get going, we need your help. We still need to fire up that time machine to transport us. Please help us by clicking on the like, subscribe, and bell notification buttons down below. Not only does this fire up the time machine, but it convinces the YouTube algorithm that we need a bigger time machine to reach more people who love history as much as you do. Now, back to our story. The arrest and transportation of the co-conspirators. Special Bailiff J.J. Reagan would be called upon to perform the duties of the arrest of those that were named in the lawsuit. By March 16th, all of the defendants, with the exception of Sheriff Ed Callahan, would be in custody in the Lexington Jail. According to the B article dated March 16th, 1905, quote, Hargises are at last jailed. C.J. Bronston will assist Colonel Allen in prosecuting the cases. Lexington, Kentucky, March 13th. The Hargises are at last behind the prison bars and occupy the same cell in the Fayette County Jail in which Caleb Powers was incarcerated, accompanied by Special Bailiff J.J. Reagan, who went to Jackson Saturday morning after them. James and Alex Hargis came here this morning on the 10 o'clock train. Elbert Hargis did not arrive till this afternoon, while Sheriff Ed Callahan is still in Breathitt County, unquote. We had to find out just who Caleb Powers was and why it was significant that the Hargises now occupied the same cell that he did. History, it seems, loves to repeat itself. Caleb Powers was the 55th Secretary of State of Kentucky, serving from December 1st, 1899 through January 31st, 1900. He was also a United States Representative that was from the Kentucky 11th District. He served in that capacity from March 4th, 1911 through March 3rd, 1919. Powers, who was a Republican, lost his appointed seat in the November 1899 election to Democrat Governor William Goebel. Powers masterminded the plot to have Goebel assassinated. The goal was for Governor William S. Taylor to retain his office. Powers was found guilty and sentenced to a life term. However, the Kentucky Court of Appeals overturned the conviction. Powers was tried 3 more times, resulting in 2 convictions and a hung jury. Powers was finally pardoned by Governor Augustus C. Wilson in 1908 after he had served 8 years behind the bars. While Powers was in the middle of this fight for freedom, the connection between Powers and the Hargis faction was not lost upon the B article author. And now the question remained, will the Hargis faction share in the same fate that Powers did? May not get bail. Just 3 days after the B article was published, we learned more information about the arrest and transport of prisoners from the Breathitt to Fayette County jails. According to the Hopkinsville, Kentuckian article dated March 16, 1905, quote, the Hargises behind bars in Fayette. Strong hand of the law laid upon wealthy leaders of crime. May not get bail. Long list of able attorneys have been retained by the prisoners. Lexington, Kentucky, March 14th. James, Alex, and Elbert Hargis of Breathitt County spent last night in the Fayette County Jail. Elbert Hargis arrived last night. This morning, Sheriff Ed Callahan reached Lexington and was also locked up. This morning, the Hargises, through their attorney, Judge Morton, asked Judge Parker to hear a motion for admission to bail. Commonwealth's attorney, Allen, announced that he wanted time to get evidence to show that the defendants were not entitled to bail. He said that the evidence against them was stronger than that against Britton, who is under life sentence for the same charge, that of complicity of murder of James Cockrill. Morton then asked for time to confer with his clients. The Hargises had not expected to remain in jail. Alex Hargis, former state senator, turned deadly pale when he was summoned to the cell. The others took it cheerfully. The bolts were turned at 9 o'clock. William Britton was permitted to visit Judge Hargis this morning. The attorneys for the defense are Morton, Webb, and Wilson, E.P. Farrell, O.N. Pollard, Judge J.J.C. Bach, and with Judges Hazelrig and McGowan and J. Smith Hayes as consulting attorneys. Although it has not yet been answered in open court, it is understood that the attorneys for the defense have agreed to submit testimony in support of their motion for bail, and to ask that the motion be heard tomorrow or someday this week, unquote. We have a bail hearing coming up for the Hargis faction. It will be interesting to see if any of them are able to make bail before the trial. After all, those that were sitting in the jail were not above intimidating witnesses, bribery, coercion, and any other host of things to try to weasel out of their trials. But there is much more information than just a bail hearing here. William Britton, who was convicted for the killing of James Cockrill, was allowed to meet with Judge Hargis during both men's incarceration for the same crime. This is highly unusual. While this meeting would be reported several times in the newspapers, the words that were spoken during the meeting were never given to the public. This would be the first time that we have found where this was allowed in all of the feud cases. Another thing that we discover in this article is that Alex Hargis was able to secure the defense attorneys. Many of them were discussed earlier in the Fight for Jurisdiction section concerning a failed meeting that Alex Hargis had with the men. One other thing about Alex Hargis was that he thought that he would not have to face going behind bars and would be released into the public. He was very shocked to find out that he had to sit behind bars and wait for the judge to rule on whether or not he would be granted bail along with the other men in the faction. Bail hearing was a shock. Hold on to your bonnets and bowler hats because we have yet another shocking judgment from the bench of Judge Watts Parker. While one man would be granted bail, it would be a heavy price to pay for the freedom during the trial. According to the Hartford Republican's article dated March 31, 1905, quote, bail was refused. County Judge Hargis, Sheriff Callahan, Elbert Hargis. Indicted men will be allowed to have trial next week. Lexington, Kentucky, March 27th. Judge Watts Parker, sitting on the criminal division of the Fayette Circuit Court, today handed down a decision overruling the motion for a bail in the case of James Hargis, the county judge, and Edward Callahan, the sheriff of Breathitt County, and Elbert Hargis, and remanded them to jail to await their trial for the murder of James Cockrill. In the case of A.H. Hargis, former state senator, the court admitted him to bail in the sum of $15,000. The court delivered an oral opinion on the motion, reciting the conditions existing in Breathitt County at the time of the murder of Cockrill, and said he believed it a matter of the state should thoroughly investigate. He said he would allow the indicted men to have a trial as soon as they were ready, and would devote as much time as was necessary to the case. He said he would allow bail to the defendant, Alex H. Hargis, on the grounds that it had been established that he was not in Jackson the day of the shooting, and had not been there for several days. Shortly after the announcement of Judge Parker's decision, Alex Hargis furnished the $15,000 bond and was released. Gus Strauss, John Flood, J.F. Vanderden, and John Skane being his bondsmen. He will return to his home at Winchester. Judge Hargis is still a judge of Breathitt County, and the question arose as to who would sit in his stead in the event bail was refused. Brett Combs of Breathitt was recently appointed magistrate of that county, and today Judge Hargis requested him to hold the term of the county court for him, which will convene next week. After the question of bail had been decided, the attorneys of the defense asked the court to set a date for the trial of the case. After consultation, it was decided that both sides could be ready by Tuesday of next week, April 4th, and the case was set for trial on that date. The court ordered the jury commissioners to meet Thursday and place 500 additional names in the jury wheel. All four of the defendants are jointly indicted, and they may be tried together or may demand separate trials. In the latter event, the Commonwealth may elect which one shall be tried first." Unquote. According to the CPI Inflation Calculator, dated April 17, 2024, the amount of $15,000 in 1905 would amount to $532,384.09 in today's money market. It seems that this high bail would ensure that Alex Hargis would be in attendance of the trial, and that this bail was only allowed because there was testimony that Alex Hargis had not been present when Cockrill was killed. But there was not enough evidence to state that he was not involved in the plot to have him killed in the first place. Conversely, the other people who were indicted for the same crime did not receive bail. Why? Was this because of the tricks that they pulled in the other courtrooms? That they now had the reputation of being difficult to handle outside of incarceration? Whatever the reason, they now had to sit in the jail cell until the trial was finished. In our next week's video, the jury will be chosen and the witnesses will begin their testimonies. There will also be some surprise confessions and finger-pointing during the trial. Will the Hargises be found guilty, innocent, or will there be a hung jury? As always, you are now our 13th juror. As we walk through the presented evidence, will you agree with the verdict or no? Thank you. We at Kentucky Tennessee Living would like to thank you for watching our video series on the Appalachian feuds. Don't forget to hit that like button, as the more likes we receive, the more likely YouTube is to suggest our videos to other viewers. Also, to receive notice when we upload a new video, be sure to subscribe and click the bell notification button. We thank you for continuing to support Kentucky Tennessee Living as we are discovering the mysteries in Appalachian history.